Can I tell you all a secret? I actually forgot all about you guys. I had forgotten about you. You ever just put on music and just get kind of caught up in the music, just sitting there listening to it, and I happened to look over and say, "Oh wow, it's 11:01." Forgot all about you, but I'm sorry though. I apologize. I apologize. I apologize. How can anyone ever forget about the world's greatest Bible study that is attended by the world's greatest YouTube family? And I apologize. I need to be flogged. So I apologize for my tardiness. But that being the case, I am ready to kind of get into it. I got a ton of energy. So I got a bunch of stuff to do today anyway, so I might as well put that energy to good use. And the best way to do it is to start off by jumping into it now. As always, I want you guys to kind of pay attention, focus on where we are. We're only going to deal with where we are and what we know so far. We're going to go back and we're going to see some things that maybe we didn't see. I did tell you that in this particular session, starting now, we'll start moving faster than we did. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. Each week, each session will pick up more and more. However, there will be some sessions where we just kind of stop and plant for a second. We are coming to the most, I shouldn't say the most, but one of the most important passages in the Bible. This is where everything kind of just starts, even though we've had one already in Genesis 3:15. But again, we're only going to deal with what we know so far. We do not get an opportunity to say what John says or what Matthew says or what even one of the prophets say. We don't do that because we haven't earned that. We haven't heard of that yet. So that way, we don't have to eisegete, which is to read into a text. Well, I think this is talking about something that's going to happen in the future. No, we're only going to stay with what the text says thus far, because if we understand what it truly says in Genesis, in this case, chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever the truth is there, it's the truth even if we get to Malachi, even if we get to John, even if we get to Revelation, it's still the truth. Now, we're going to have more revelations, what we call progressive revelation. The Bible does not dump everything on us all at once. The Bible will give us some information and then build on that, which makes sense. Have you ever tried to dump everything out on a first grader or a fourth grader or a 10th grader? When I finally made home, you started telling me stuff about technology and so forth. I had no idea what you're talking about. My wife and kids were telling me, "No, Daddy, you don't need an MP3 player. You can use your phone." I said, "Why would I use my phone to listen to music? I need an MP3 player." I could not get it. I could not understand what they were talking about. Takes you a little while to kind of ease on in. I still have not gotten used to driving a car with when you back up the window, the camera freaks me out every time. I'm used to putting my arm on the seat beside me and looking back, looking out the windows. Then I notice, oh, there's a mirror right there. I mean, there's a camera right there. Messes me up. So it takes a while. That's kind of how the Bible does as well. Are we able to ask questions or clarify what we have covered now? You certainly are able to do so. As a matter of fact, if you guys would like to do so now, feel free if you have a question, but it can only be a question about the first 4 sessions or anything up to Genesis. Where do we leave off at? I think Genesis 8 or 7 is where we left off at. So any questions that you guys want to cover, or as we're going, if you want to cover any pertinent questions that are germane to this. That's it. Okay? So, that being stated, if you do have a question, make sure it's only a question about where we are. Those kind of questions I do want you to offer. So if it's about that, don't ask about tongues. Don't ask about gifts of the Holy Spirit. Don't ask about once saved, always saved. Don't ask about any of those things. Those are important, but we want to stay here. Amen. So now remember, we're looking at things as best we can through God's lens, because again, above all else, God is sovereign. And so it's what he wants, what he's trying to do, and then we kind of look through his lens as best we can. Obviously, that's extremely difficult. But we want to look at it from how he looks at things. His goal is he is trying to reconcile man. What we'll notice, guys, is, have you noticed the attempts that God has gone through, the lengths that he's gone through to provide for his people? Even in the very beginning. Even in the very beginning, what does he do? He gives man all that he needs. He doesn't clothe man because mankind doesn't need any clothes. He's in a temperature controlled environment. Perfect environment. Perfect environment. You don't have to really work the ground. There's some things you may have to do, but really it's not much. It's not much at all. The food is going to come to you. You don't have to worry about bad weather. There is no rain. So God puts them in the perfect environment, and then they mess up. But then even after that, we see in Genesis 5 that they are now bringing an offering to God. Why? Because God still wants to reconcile with man. Now we're going to see this again. Now remember all of the characters that we've also seen thus far. Okay, remember those names. And then keep in mind as we keep going. So that being the case, let me look at what you say. I was reading my chronological Bible when it discusses sons of God and daughters of men. Could this have meant, okay. That was something we covered last week, and I don't want to go too far into it, but I think that's what it was. I think that has to do with the sense of the godly line of man and the ungodly line of man. We've got a group of people that went a different direction. But I want you all to think about something, about what's getting ready to happen, and what does that do about everything that we've seen and saw thus far. Let's go back. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We are in, let's go to Genesis 7:1. Let's start there. Genesis 7:1. Genesis 7:1. Then the Lord said to Noah, enter the ark, you and all your household. Now, what is he saying? That mankind is horrible. Mankind is wicked. By the way, guys, do not think that what we see today is unlike or uncommon compared to what we've seen in the past. Man is horrible. Man has always been horrible. Left to his own devices, man will do some crazy things. You can put 2 3-year-olds in a room together and just put random things around. They'll figure out a way to either hurt each other or to break something. So you said there's a few things that I've read in Job that I can see it being early, but many of the things his friends talk about are later after Moses. So it's complementary to Genesis, actually. Yes. As a matter of fact, we're going to see some things that are stated that's going to say, well, wait a second. This must be how he's talking to someone else. I told you before that even though we're trying to put ourselves in the place of what's happening here, Moses is explaining these things to us. God is telling Moses is writing down, giving an account. But who's he giving an account to? He's giving an account to the Jews. And we're going to see that when I said the Jews, we're going to see that in a second. But let's go back to it. He says, this is after he's saying what he's going to do. He's going to destroy the earth with water. He says, then the Lord tells him to build an ark. Obviously, you all know the story, so we won't spend too much time in this part. Then the Lord said, Noah, enter the ark, you and all your household. For you alone I have seen to be righteous before me in this time. Now we got to stay right here for a second. Look what he says. He says, for you alone I have seen to be righteous. You alone. Just you. Now, by the way, the word that's used here for you alone, where am I at? Okay. When we look, it doesn't actually say the word alone. It says key, which is that or when or because, and then the direct object marker, which isn't pronounced, but then you to you, that you, and then he says, I have seen. And then he says righteous before the face of my. So he's saying, Noah, you're the only one that I see as righteous. Well, that kind of keeps in context. I mean, keeping in with what he said earlier in chapter 6, where he says that Noah walked with God. Again, this term Noah or walking with God does not mean or indicate that he has been taken up or gone to heaven, or it just means that he is walking with God. Okay. Well, and that's a good question. That's a very good question. He asked, what did Noah do to be righteous before God? Maybe he is the only one of the descendants of Seth not to marry the daughters of men. Well, he's not the only one to marry his no, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that at all. As a matter of fact, his sons haven't. I wouldn't think that his sons have. He's not the only one. First of all, there's probably not enough daughters of them for all of the godly line or the godly men or those that are supposed to be acting godly. I wouldn't say that. We couldn't earn that statement, but what has he done to be righteous? We don't know, other than the fact that he has trusted God. We see that he clearly trusts God. That part we do see. We see so because what is Noah doing? Noah is building an ark. It takes a whole lot of trust to do so. But God has also, again, we don't have all the details, so it'd be kind of hard to say why exactly what all Noah has done. But just trusting him, he says, Noah, I want you to build the world's biggest boat. Well, any boat you build will be the world's biggest boat. So that's number one. Number two, the reason for it is it's going to rain. What is rain? Haven't seen that before. There's something else to trust. Then also, I want you to bring all these animals in, all of them. Noah's thinking, first of all, I can't catch. God, have you seen some of the legs on some of these animals? I can't catch them. How am I going to do that? What about the birds? How am I going to do all of that? I can't. But still, Noah trusts God, and it's evident. So now remember, being righteous, this word tzaddik, I should highlight it, put it on the screen. This word tzaddik does not mean because of yourself, in and of yourself, you're righteous. No, it just means that you are in right standing. There can be different ways. By the way, in a generic sense, anybody can be in a generic sense right before someone else. If you go to court, you can be right, but you can be in right standing before the court. If you have a light bill, a phone bill, you can be in right standing before AT&T or right standing before T-Mobile, or I was going to say Sprint. They don't have Sprint anymore. Or in right standing before the cable providers, whoever. You can be in right standing because I don't owe you anything. Are you with me? And so in this case, I keep saying Moses. Noah is in right standing. Are you with me? And so I think that is important to remember that he says that Noah, and he says Noah alone, which tells me something. And I think you all need to see this. Noah is in right standing, and God is going to destroy the world. Now, before we go there, let's hop back just a little bit to Genesis 6:18. And I want you all to tell me what you see here. Genesis 8:16. He says, but let's go back a little further. Behold, I am bringing the flood of the water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under heaven. Everything that is on the earth shall perish. But, God says, I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. So, what is God establishing here? You might want to say that here God is establishing his covenant. He is not establishing his covenant right here. No. Let's go back and look at it again. And this is why I say let's now it's right there in front of us. It's not really hiding, but sometimes we can get ahead of ourselves. He said, but I will establish my covenant. Well, he hasn't established his covenant yet. He's just letting Noah know of his plans. He's going to establish his covenant. Someone says that do the original text. So the original text doesn't say Noah alone. No, the wording just says to Noah. Matter of fact, let's go back to it. All right. It says the Hebrew word key, akah, which is to you, so that to you, and then this word right here is to see, which is ra'ah. So ra'iyah, I'm sorry, ra'iti, which is I see to you, I see you, righteous, and then lapani, which is before me. So when you say that, it's rough, kind of in an English, trying to translate it just rough English wise, but it literally means you're the one that I see, no one else. And so it is proper, as a matter of fact, the right way to translate it as you alone. Okay, so he's focusing on him, and there is a reason why. I'll come back to it in just a second, though. But him establishing his covenant again, I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark. So now he's establishing his covenant with who? Well, he's establishing his covenant with you. And by the way, guys, this is singular. So the you here is this singular you. So I'm establishing my covenant with you. Now, this covenant that he's established, and we've covered this before. If I would think, I think it'd be good for you guys to go back. There's a video that I did some time ago on misunderstanding, or was it the misunderstanding or understanding the covenants? Go back and watch that. We cover all of the covenants and how the covenants lead to the next covenant. And no covenant is violated. The preceding covenant is not violated. Does not violate the prior covenant. Keeping in mind the prior covenant. Okay. But he says, I'm establishing my covenant with you. But in doing so, there are all these other people that are going to benefit. So because I established a covenant, I established my covenant. Does that mean it's just going to benefit you? Well, no. Remember what God has stated in Genesis 3:15. This is why let's keep in mind the main things that we know of. In Genesis 3:15, he says, speaking of what he's going to do about the woman's seed bruising the head of the seed of the serpent, we don't get a full picture, but if he's going to destroy the world, then what about this promise that you make in Genesis 3:15? So he can't do that. There's got to be somebody left. Well, who's he making? Who's the somebody left that he's thinking of? Well, he's thinking of Noah. He's thinking of Noah. Noah has a wife. Now, Noah and his wife are seems to be past childbirthing age. I don't know if Miss Noah is having any more babies. Doesn't seem like it. But they got 3 now. Obviously, God can work that out. They can be 1,000 years old and have kids because God is the one that gives. God is the one that takes away. God is the one that will bless the womb, so forth. But he's got to have at least him and a woman. And so here comes Mrs. Noah. But those of childbearing age would be his sons and their wives. What are his sons and wives like? I mean, his sons and his sons' wives are like? We don't know. We're going to get some information about them in a second, but I want to focus on this issue about Noah alone, you alone, and I'm establishing my covenant with you. It's going to benefit the rest of the world. But what you can probably see is God is not going to destroy the righteous just for the sake of destroying the wicked. God will still protect the righteous. Take that somewhere, however you want to word that, however you want to set it aside. And that's a truth that I don't think anyone's going to ever disagree with. A person who is righteous before the Lord, God is not going to destroy that person. A person who is in, and I say righteous, not that the person is perfect, because we're talking about someone that's in right standing. So a person that's in right standing before the Lord, God will not harm. God will not hurt. God will not destroy. Are you with me? This, we're going to find out, is going to be a timeless stance before the Lord. He's a just judge. I told you before, there's 2 main attributes that we see the Lord working off of. Now, God has, we said, communicable attributes and incommunicable attributes. So communicable attributes are those that he shares with us. Incommunicable attributes are those that he doesn't share. The incommunicable are he's omnipresent, omniscient. Are you with me? Omnipotent. We don't have all power, all knowledge. We're not all present everywhere. But then there's some traits, characteristics that he does share, such as loving, such as being jealous, such as angry. Now, he uses those characteristics perfectly. We don't. We're not. We don't love perfectly. Our jealousy is because we're offended, not for His sake, right? So, but His two main that everything flows from is He's just and He's loving. His justice dictates that I've got to do something about sin. If I say it, I mean it. But then He's also loving. I meant what I said, and they need punishing, but I love them. So how can I fix this? How can I make it so that they know that they understand my love and that they do right? And so we see both of those showing up because what He did with them after they sinned, He could have just destroyed them, gotten rid of them. But He brings about a way for them to be reconciled by this offering that we see them that Cain doesn't do properly. Are you with me? And we're going to see something about this offering in just a second. Let me see this. In regards to the Genesis flood story, how was this story important to the Israelites who just have become freed? Are there any other flood stories in Egypt that could be related to? There are always some other stories. There have been what we would consider counterfeit stories, but the fact of the matter is there are stories of a flood. I'm not a geologist, but even geologists will say, well, listen, these markings on the rocks and so forth seem to be indicative of some sort of flood or some sort of extreme weather pattern. One of the things that is all jacked up, and I mean all jacked up, they can do dating on living animals. And the testing comes back so inconclusive that a living mollusk, a living animal, can come back dated as a few 100,000 or a few million years old. Well, we know that's not correct. Here's the reason why, because one of the things that they're looking for is they're trying to compare what's inside the animal with what is outside of the animal. In many cases, it might be the carbon. The problem is the carbon in the atmosphere is different than the carbon in the animal, and they figure, well, how much carbon might change and so forth. Here's the big problem, though. What can change the level of carbon in the atmosphere? The level of water in the atmosphere. That can be done through a great flood, or evolutionists would say a great ice age. So they can't even date properly. Now they want to attribute it to being an ice age, but we'll say a flood. The level of water in the atmosphere through this flood and so forth does change the level of carbon. By the way, we know that the level of oxygen, how rich the oxygen is that we breathe, has also changed over time. So we don't even breathe the best kind of air. And this is even before we have factories and so forth. Anyway, that being the case, let's go ahead and jump back into it. So there can be someone else's account. The only problem is other religions, pagan religions that may have a flood account, we can discount them for two reasons. One, those pagan religions aren't around anymore. Two, they have no other truth. They don't have predictive prophecy that has come true except for this one. Are you with me? So I hope that helps. That's a good question, though. That really is a good question. Let's go back to it. So He tells them at the end of the ark, because you alone are righteous. I wanted just to bring that up. Okay. Now remember, he said that to bring in clean animals and unclean animals. We talked about last week. Why would He be saying clean and unclean? Because who is He telling the story to? So it may not be that He said to Moses, quit saying that. It may not be that He said to Noah, bring in clean and unclean. He may have. But remember, when we go and look up when He's speaking to the Jews, because Moses is telling this story to who? To Jews. The Jews know what clean and unclean are. Now, the animals in and of themselves are not clean or unclean. He never calls the animals clean. When we go back and look at, we'll get there when He sets up the law. He never calls those animals, for example, the pig. He never calls the pig unclean. He says the pig is unclean to you. That's the point. But then we look further, as we go further, we'll see that those animals are no longer unclean. Now, that being the case, I wanted to bring that up because I thought that was very important. Again, that's a fact that's established, that He is not going to destroy the person that's also in right standing. By the way, and we're going to go ahead and move forward. We're not going to deal with everything that happened during the flood and so forth. We won't deal with that. I'll let you guys read that, and I hope that you all will have read that. If not, go back and read it again. There's going to be some more reading for you to do as we go forward. But do y'all realize how long Moses, I keep saying Moses, stop. Do y'all realize how long Noah was in the ark? Think about that for a second. How long was Noah actually in the ark? People would say, people will say that it's only been, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question. Why would this story be important? Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. One, if it's true, then it needs to be stated. He's just given a creation account. But two, the fact that he's made this covenant and that you can see the covenant in the sky when he makes this covenant, this rainbow. So that's why it's important. There's a few other reasons, but I don't want to get hung up on too far or too much. Cephas Rock says more than 40 days, too many many moons, 377 days. So Charlotte was correct. A year, 377 days. 377 days. Are you with me? It's a long time. And so God has them to take provisions in there and keeps them for 377 days. It's a long time. Long time. Now, what I want to do is I want to jump to the next portion of this. We're going to go to wait a minute. I want to make sure I cover something. Oh, okay. I was searching. I just want to make sure I cover the parts I need to cover. Okay, cool. All right. Now I want to jump to Genesis chapter 8, and we're going to start in verse 20. So here's what we're going to catch up to. Chapter 8, verse 20. After they come out of the ark, look what it says. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Wait a minute. Why? Why are you offering an offering? For what? Well, we don't know why, the for what, or even the procedures around it, but the fact that he did it must mean that there must be a way to do it. There's a standard way to do it. There's a specified way of doing it. There's a correct way to do it, a right and a wrong way. Okay? And so look what it says, verse 21. Then the Lord smelled the soothing aroma. And the Lord said to himself, look what he says, I will never again curse the ground on account of men. Wait a minute. Okay, God, hold on. I was confused. Please unconfuse me, because now you're saying I will never again curse the ground on account of men. But I thought how you cursed the ground then is the same way that it's cursed now. What gives? You all see that, right? Now, does that mean it won't be the same way that it is cursed, but not the same way and so forth? I don't know. But we need to look at that. So just kind of take that, set it to the side, and see if we can find out a little bit more information about this. He says, I will never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth, and I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done. So in my head, I'm just wondering, what does he mean? Because to me, it seems like the ground is cursed. It seems, listen, I go out and I look at the atmosphere and I look at nature and so forth, and it seems like there's some cursing. There's some stuff happening, because what does he tell man? He tells him that in it you're going to labor, you're going to toil from the sweat of your brow, you're going to draw things up. There's going to be some weeds now. Well, guess what? There's weeds now. I'm pretty sure my lawn does not look like how God intended it to be. I'm pretty sure that. If you see my lawn, you'd know that is not God's intention. So what does he mean? Well, we don't have enough information now. That's a good thing for us to realize. To be able to say, I don't have enough information right now. Now I may later, but right now. So what do I don't, or how should I say this the correct way? What do I not want to do? Make it up. I don't want to make it up. Maybe we'll see this later. Maybe we'll see this happening. Now, it could be, if we understand what the point of the ground is for, That may help us to understand. That could be. But before we do, amen, DT. So let's go back to it. I will never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth, and I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, look what he says, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So he says, while the earth remains, these seasons shall remain. They shall stay. Okay? Important. And guess what? They do. By the way, so what we know now so far is that everything has been destroyed. All the evil that was, all the whoever you think the Nephilim were, however you think they got here, they're destroyed. All of the descendants of Cain are destroyed. Everybody's destroyed except Noah, his wife, his sons, and his sons' wives. Makes you wonder, well, God, what was all that about? Why do we have to go through all of that history for only for you to destroy them? There's no remnant of them left. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to that. But then look what he says, chapter 9, verse 1. Then God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Well, where did he get that from? Well, it's what he's always said. God has always stated for man to be fruitful and to multiply. In other words, you and your wife, y'all go on and do your thing and then have a bunch of babies. Have babies, have babies, have babies. Jeff says, how important is it, or is it important for us to note that it is by water that it is destroyed? Yeah, well, that is very important. Now, he's going to destroy it again. He's going to destroy the earth again, but he just won't do it with water. So, good question, Cephas. Where did the giants come from if everyone was destroyed? Well, that was my point. That was my point by saying they were not fallen angels. There is a race of people, or there's a group called from a person named Anak. And these descendants, by the way, the term means long necks and so forth. They're tall people. And guess who their cousins are? Guess who they're also related to? With the Nephilim. Nephilim, Anak, and Philistines. Apparently, according to some other extra biblical writings, that their height seems to kind of come down over time. But there were giants in the land, clearly. And it doesn't say that they were giants because of these Nephilim. I mean, because of Nephilim, because of the sons of man and the sons of God and the daughters of man. They're just tall, big people. That's all. Now, all we know is this: whoever they are, whatever they are, wherever they came from, is immaterial to the fact that everybody's gone, everybody's dead, except for Noah. And so God blesses them. He says to be fruitful and multiply, which they're going to do. He says the fear of you. Now, here is something very important. The fear of you and the terror of you will be on every beast of the earth and on every bird of the sky, which is why animals do not like human beings. It wasn't when God had to take an animal, take his skin and cover them. No, this was because God had deemed this so at this point. So the fear of you would be on every beast of the earth and on every bird of the sky. With everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea into your hand, they are given. Yeah, I wouldn't do it, but if you were to stumble across an elephant or a lion, most animals do have an instinctive fear of you. They tend to want to move away from you. Now, I wouldn't want to be around too close because they might attack out of fear for you. You're too close to the babies, or I fear you, but the lion says my stomach is grumbling and I feel like a snack. Elephants attack not because they're hungry, but because of a fear, and they want to defend themselves. Same thing with hippos and rhinos and so forth, and horses and anything charging at Corey. I'm moving. I'm gone. I wouldn't care if it was an angry koala. I'm moving. Gotta go. Sorry, that's just me. I'm not scared of the animals. I just don't play with them. I just, I just don't play with them. So anyway, so he says the terror of the beast that will be on these animals, with everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea into your hands they are given. Every moving thing that is alive, here it is now, shall be food for you. I have given all to you as I gave the green plant. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Okay, couple things. Now we're going to start moving quickly. Now you can start eating animals, just like you can eat plants. So now you don't have to eat a salad every day, wife of mine. I don't have to eat a salad every day, honey. I can eat some meat. I can eat some chicken. I can eat some pork. I can eat some steak. Yes, honey. I can eat meat and vegetables. I should not have to eat vegetables masquerade as meat. That's wrong. I should not have to drink trans milk, and I should not have to eat trans vegetables. Vegetables over on this side of the plate, meat on that side of the plate. Amen. Amen. But anyway, God gives it. But notice what he says. Pay attention to what he said. This is why Genesis is so important. He is establishing, no rare steak. No. He is establishing a principle going forward. And he tells us something vitally important. Vitally important. Look what he says. Verse 4, only you shall not eat flesh with its life. What does he call its life? It's blood. Surely I will require your lifeblood. From every beast I will require it, and from every man's brother I will require the life of man. So he's speaking about blood. Now we see this issue of blood showing up. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. As for you, be fruitful and multiply, populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it. So go out, enjoy yourself, have babies, live life, do you, remember me. And do not kill your brothers. And do not eat anything with blood. Blood is so sacred that if you shed it, you're in trouble. And if you eat anything with it, you're in trouble. Why? Now, let me stop. I said before, one of the rules is we will not say anything unless we've earned it. But I've got to make this statement because we're going to find out that the life of the flesh is in the blood. Are you with me? Keep that in mind. It's vital that you know that the life of the flesh is in the blood, and he's going to require it for something. You don't have to know what the something is, but he just told us how important the life of the flesh is, how important blood is. Okay? That part, write it down also. Write this down. Memorize this. Okay? Now, before I go any further, God has made, I'm sorry, no, he hasn't. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. Verse 8. Then God spoke to Noah and his sons with him, saying, now behold, I myself do establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you. Okay, now we see the Noahic covenant. He spoke about the covenant previously, but now he's actually going to establish this covenant. He hadn't done it yet. Now he is going to. Now he's doing so. He says, with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you, of all that comes out of the ark, even every beast of the earth. So he's establishing his covenant. By the way, I want you to see this word right here. I establish my covenant with you and all flesh, never again to be cut off by the water of the flood, neither shall there again be a flood to destroy the earth. And so he's establishing, now this word for covenant, let's see, with you. So he's establishing his covenant with you. That's singular, still to Noah, and all flesh shall never again. So he's making a covenant with who? With Noah. But again, it's going to benefit others. Let me say that again. He's establishing his covenant with who? With the world? No, but it's benefiting the world. It's benefiting the animals. It's benefiting the rest of the world. Okay? So now what we need to do is we need to get into the covenants. There are these different types of covenants. Okay, these are the different elements of the covenants. Okay, what we have a unilateral covenant. That is, one person is responsible for the terms and condition of the covenant in the unilateral covenant. In a bilateral covenant, both or multiple parties are responsible for maintaining the covenant. So that's a bilateral and that's a unilateral covenant. Then we have, based on a set of conditions, that's a conditional covenant. So it's an if then covenant. Then we have a unconditional covenant. It's not based on any conditions. Are you with me? So we've got these four these four different elements of a covenant. Now, all four can't be in place because two of them might contradict the other two. For example, you can't have a unilateral and a bilateral covenant at the same time. You can't have a conditional and an unconditional covenant. Now, you can have a unilateral and an unconditional, or a bilateral and an unconditional. By the way, can any of you guys give me an example of a bilateral unconditional covenant? It's the most prevalent covenant that we have ever seen in the history of mankind. A bilateral unconditional covenant. Now, this covenant is a unilateral unconditional covenant. God is setting it, and it's not based on any conditions. Are you with me? But can you give me an example of a bilateral unconditional? There we go. There we go. Sarah says it correctly. Marriage. Marriage. You and your husband, you and your wife, that is a bilateral unconditional in the sense that it's not because she doesn't do what you think she ought to do, now I'm through. Or he doesn't do what you think he's supposed to do now. No. It's a covenant, guys. It's an unconditional covenant. It's not based on if you do this, then I do that. That's horrible. But now if we act like that, we act though nowadays that if you don't do this, then we have what we call irreconcilable differences. No, it's a bilateral covenant. We both are responsible for keeping and maintaining the covenant, but it's not an if-then covenant. Are you with me? So there we have it. No, not the Mosaic covenant, and not even the covenant that brings about salvation for us. No. So let's go back to those covenants again. Let's put it on the screen. Type of covenants, or the elements, I should say: unilateral, bilateral, conditional, or unconditional. This we have a unilateral unconditional covenant. And so this is a Noahic covenant. And so in this one, it is unilateral, unconditional. We see that being spoken of in Genesis 6:18 and Genesis 9:9. And the question is, who were the parties involved? So who are the parties involved in this covenant? Who are the parties involved in this covenant? Well, God and Noah. But the beneficiaries of the covenant is everybody. Okay? Because he says what he's going to do, and all flesh will not be destroyed because of this. And then, so what does he do as a sign of the covenant? Verse 12, and God said, this is a sign of the covenant which I am making between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all successive generations. I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a sign of a covenant between me and the earth. It shall come about when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow will be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and never again shall the water become a flood to destroy all flesh. It'd be cool if we actually remember that. That part would be cool if we actually remembered that, but we don't. So now, what do I want to do now is I want to move forward. Where I don't want to stay in this. Okay, let's move a little further in chapter 9. Matter of fact, it's actually important. Now, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah. And from these, the whole earth was populated. Then Noah began farming and planted a vineyard. Must have planted some grapes. He must have planted some grapes. Yeah. He drank of the wine and became drunk and uncovered himself in his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan. Why is he saying the father of Canaan? Because who is he talking to? He's talking to Jews who they understand. Oh, I know who Canaan is. The people of Canaan. That's important. saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and walked backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were turned away so that they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. Now, seeing his nakedness, what that really is just simply him seeing, staring, maybe even in a mocking fashion. Let me pause for a second. Time out. I said that we have to earn a statement because I don't want to leave you guys hanging. There are passages that speaks about in the law that a man or a boy or a child cannot see the nakedness of his father, or he cannot see the nakedness of his mother. That cannot be, he cannot actually see his father naked or see his mother naked. How many of you all, as you were little kids, actually saw your parents naked? I'm pretty sure everybody did. That'd be hard to do. It'd be hard not to, especially then. They didn't have multiple rooms and 2.5 baths and so forth. So they would see them, but it's how they looked at them, kind of in staring, Googling, whatever, and just, I said Googling, mocking and so forth, and checking. No, that's what it seems like Ham did. And then look at this curse, he says. So he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord of the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servants." Now, let me tell you what this curse is not. One, he's not cursing. The reason why he doesn't curse Ham, and he's not even necessarily cursing Canaan, his grandson. No, that's not what he's doing. He's cursing the people and this land that they're going to be at. Because we're speaking of a person who walks with God. We're speaking of a person who has a relationship with God. And what is he doing? He's speaking of this particular land. Where, time out for a second, when we get forward and we look at where Abram is going, where is he going? To Canaan. We're going to find out something about Canaan in just a second. But I don't want you to think that this has any sort of racial component. Some folks say that Ham was black, Shem was Jewish, Japheth was maybe Asian or European. No, he didn't have three different race kids. Noah did not go to the adoption agency and get some different kids. No, they all look like mom and daddy. So, but there's something about Canaan or Ham's descendant. There's something about Ham himself. In this day, guys, people judge you according to your actions. When you acted a certain way, they assumed that you were that way. It wasn't, oh, I was just tripping that day. I went off and yelled at folks. That's not really who I am. No, if you went off and cussed folks out, that's because folks would assume that's who you are. And however they saw you, you would have, if it was in a negative light, you would have to work like heck to get away from that, to get folks to see you in a different light. So how he was branded based on his actions and thinking that his descendants would be the same way. If you're like this and you're the father and you are going to hold some sway, some influence on your children and grandchildren, they're going to be like you. And so for that reason, curse all your descendants, because your descendants are going to be just like you. Your descendants are going to be selfish, are going to want to put other folks down. Your descendants are going to be like you, all about you. And so cursed be that entire lineage of you. Are you with me? Now, let's go back to it. He says, now Noah lived 350 years after the flood. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So again, walking with God does not mean that you don't die. He died. Now, I want to look at these really, really briefly. In chapter 10, the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah. I'll skip past Japheth, and I want to go to verse 6. And I want to go to the descendants of Ham. I want you to see something. Now, the sons of Ham were Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan. The sons of Cush were Seba. I won't go through all of them. I want to drop down to verse 10. Speaking of Nimrod, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Look what it says. The beginning of his kingdom, Nimrod, who was a descendant of Ham. Look what it says. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech. and Akkad. Now, let's drop down a little further. Verse 15. Canaan became the father of Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite, and the Hivites. So we see, I won't read all of these names. I just want to see who we're speaking of. Now look at the territory of Canaan. The territory of Canaan, this is verse 19, extended from Sidon as you go toward Gerar, as far as Gaza, as you go towards Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember these names, these places, these territories that he's bringing up. Remember that. It's not, again, that God is just, let me just throw some names out, just confuse you guys, bore you. No, listen to the names, the places that he's bringing up. Okay? Verse 20. By the way, just mentioned Sodom and Gomorrah. Verse 20. These are the sons of Ham according to their families, according to their language, by their land, by their nations. Now, verse 21, also important. I'm not going to read a lot of verse 21. I'm throwing a lot out here. I'm going to come back and fix it in a second if I'm confusing you or it's too much. Verse 21, also to Shem, the father of all the children of Aber, and the older brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem were Elam and Asher, and I want to go into all of these. I just want you to, I said something there. I'm going to come back to it in a second. Okay? Now, I want to drop down to verse 32. These are the families of Noah, according to their genealogies by their nation, and all of them were the nations were separated on the earth after. Now, there's a word that you're going to see, these genealogies or generations, this word called Toledoth, which we'll see this Hebrew word Toledoth, which means the genealogies of these people. You'll see that all throughout Genesis, and there's a reason for those, guys. There's an important reason why. Now, I want to go to this next passage and look at this. Chapter 11, verse 1. Now, the whole earth used the same language. So everybody. Now, was everybody in the same place? No, they were not. Ham's people were in a certain area. Shem and Japheth in a certain area as well. So now the whole earth, all of the earth, including Ham, Shem, and Japheth, they all spoke the same language. The same words, it came about as they journeyed east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. And they came and they said, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name. Otherwise, we'll be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. Now, what did God tell them to do? Be fruitful and multiply over the entirety of the earth. What do? Nope, we're standing right here. We like it here. And so they had this one language, again, important, and this is what they began to do. And now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Verse 7, come, let us, plural, let us go down there and confuse their language so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel. Whose descendants are we speaking of here? Does anybody remember whose descendants? This is why I was reading the genealogy. Babel is a nation or an area where Ham or the Canaanites, some of the Canaanites went to. That's why this is important. These are not good people. These are not good godly folk. Okay? They wanted to build a name for themselves. They didn't care about spreading the name of God, but their own. They were after their own identity, their own fame. Sounds like their great-great-grandpappy Ham. Okay? Therefore, its name was Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the earth. Now I want to go to this next one, 11:10. These are the records of the generation of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and became the father of Arpachshad. Hebrew words make you spit. 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived 500 years and became the father of Arpachshad, and he had other sons and daughters. Let's see. Let's drop down to verse 14. Very important. I'll tell you why it's important in a second. Shelah lived, this is a descendant of his, Shelah lived 30 years and became the father of Abram. And Shelah lived 400 years, and 3 years after he became the father of Abram, he had other sons and daughters. Okay? Now, if we drop down further, we're going to find out who they end up becoming, their descendants. We see Sherug becomes a descendant, and then Nahor. Nahor, verse 24, lived 29 years and became the father of Terah. And Nahor lived 119 years after he became the father of Terah, and he had other sons and daughters. Here it is, verse 26. Now we're going to start cooking. Terah lived 70 years and became the father of Abram. You all know Abram. Yes, you do. Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And you're going to need to know something about Nahor and Haran in a second as well. Now, these are the records of the generation of Terah. Terah became the father of Abram, and Haran, and Haran became the father of Lot. You know Lot. Well, if you don't, you'll know Lot in a second. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his birth in Ur of the Chaldeans. So where are they? In Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran. The father of Milcah and Ishka, Sarai was barren. She had no child. Wow, she's going to throw that out there. Now, they're all part of the same lineage. This is important because we're going to see something in a second that might be a bit confusing. Okay? So let's drop down to 30. Well, let's say in 31. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son, Abram's wife, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan. And they went as far as Haran and settled there. The days of Terah were 200 years, and 5 years, and Terah died in Haran. Now, here's chapter 12. I want to see if you all notice something. Before we go there, I want to ask you guys a question. When God is going to, y'all know the story. God is getting ready to tell Moses, quit saying Moses. I got Moses on my. God is getting ready to tell Abram to leave. Right? Is this how you understood the story? God tells Abram to leave and get out of your father's house, to leave Ur of the Chaldeans, right? Is that correct? Get out of your father's land and leave. Have you all heard that story? And then someone will say, well, Abram had to actually leave in order to demonstrate faith. Now, I want to say, I'm asking this. It's an important reason why I'm asking this question. Have you heard that story? Have you heard it said that God tells Abram to leave your father's house, to leave this nation out of the Ur of the Chaldeans and go to a land that I will show you? Have you heard it said that way? Okay, good. People are saying yes. That's incorrect. That's incorrect. Did God say, Abram, leave out of this land. You're in this land. Leave and go to this land. That's not what he just said. How do I know? Because what did he just say? Let's go back up to chapter 11. Let's go back to chapter 11 again. And let's go to verse 31. Let's see why Abram left. Terah took Abram his son and Lot the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, and his son Abram's wife, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan. So who is taking Abram and his family out of his father's land? Terah is. So when God makes the statement in chapter 12, now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, in chapter 12, verse 1, he's saying, as you're going, so now I want you to go to a particular direction. He's already leaving. Are you all with me? So it's not that God is telling him, hey, you're stuck. It's not that God is telling him because he's already there. It's as you're leaving. Your father's taking you. So now I want you to leave here, but this is where I want you to go. Are you with me? So it's never said that faith or that Abraham's faith was because he left the land. No, it's not because he left the land. He left the land because Terah took him. Are you with me? His faith is credited him because of something else. Let's go back to it. Verse 2. And I will make you a, by the way, I've said this before, guys. I said, and I want you guys, remember I said that there are certain verses you better remember. Important verses. Verses that set the tone and the foundation of our faith. We're getting ready to look into it. This is the verse or the two verses that set everything off. I cannot overemphasize this. What we're getting ready to read, this is of extreme importance. Get a black marker, magic marker, and scribble it on the inside of your Bible. Genesis 12, verses 2 and 3. He says, and I will make you as you're leaving, this is really what he said, as you're leaving your father's house, as you're leaving, look what he says, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the ones who curse you, I will curse, and in you all the families or the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Guys, this is one of, if not the most foundational verses in the Bible, because this is where it all starts. Why is that important? Because I don't care if you're Jew or if you're Gentile. This is your history. This is your lineage. This is it right here. This is where it all goes. This is where it comes from. Genesis 12, verses 2 and 3. Now, what we have to do is see what's happening. I will make you, speaking of Abram, a great nation. And I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. So he's speaking one about Abram, but then he speaks about other people as well. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one that curses you, I will curse. Then he speaks about the other folks who have no relation to Abram at all. We never met Abram, don't know anything about Abram. Abram who? I got a cousin named Abraham, but he's 75 years old and he lives in Delaware. What's up with him? No, it's a different Abram or Abraham. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, before we go any further, let's look at the Abrahamic covenant. This is also a unilateral covenant. This is a unilateral, unconditional. It's just God setting the terms of the covenant and him also keeping it. It's not if Abraham, if you do this, then I'll do that. So if someone comes back and says, well, Abraham had to leave his family, he had to leave his land, he had to leave Ur of the Chaldeans, in order for God to know, he was already doing that. So it's not a conditional covenant. Are you with me? And so we see Genesis 12, but if you look up there, I also have Genesis 15. Okay, now, before we get to the Genesis 15 part, which we will in a second, what do we call what God just said to Abram getting ready to be Abraham? What do we call that? Is this a covenant with Abraham right here? I'm going to ask you guys this question while I drink my cult-sponsored mug. Do you all think this is a covenant with Abraham? And I'm just trying to see. Someone says, yes, I see covenant. The truth of the matter is, guys, as you all are typing yes, this is not the covenant with Abraham. It's not the covenant. What is it? Well, let's ask CG. CG said it correctly. Not yet. Amen, CG. Amen. This is not the covenant, not yet. This will be a part of the covenant, but it's not yet. He's just saying what I will do with you. I'm going to. So when he does establish a covenant, what must we remember? we must remember this part of the covenant. Now, this is going to be part of the Abrahamic covenant. He just hadn't established it yet. Are you with me? But he says, I will, so in the future, I will do these things. I will make you a great nation. Now, I want to bring this up. Look at these promises that he brings in. One, the promises relate to Abram or Abraham and his people being blessed. That's the first portion of it. The second portion of it is how the nations or the people and are related to. So how the people are going to relate to Abraham and Abraham's people, how they will relate to him and how their people will relate to other people. So that's also important. But then also the third one is how other nations are blessed. So the question is, when I ask you about this covenant, who were the parties that are involved? Who are the parties that are involved? Well, the parties that are involved are Abraham and God. Also, who are the beneficiaries of this covenant that he's going to establish? So let me ask you guys this question. This is vitally important. Who are the beneficiaries of this covenant? I actually said it earlier. The beneficiaries of this covenant is not just Abram or Abraham. It's not just his wife. He didn't have any kids because it said she's barren. But we're going to find out that he's going to have some kids. So it's his children, his descendants, but just his descendants only. And when I say this is descendants, his seed, his physical seed, no. Let's go back to it. Look what it says. And I will make you, Abram, a great nation. Well, wait a second. This Hebrew word for nation is goy. That's a nation. That's a nation. And by the way, this is singular. I'm going to make you a great nation. How? I don't have any kids, God. You have to fix something. Next part, he says, and I will bless you and make your name great. Okay, so everybody's going to know about me and my name and my nation. Okay, fine. But right now, it's just me and my wife. You're going to have to do some mighty things between me and my wife. But you say this nation part. We'll get to the elements of this covenant in a second. And so you shall be a blessing. Okay, so me and my wife, me and mine, and my descendants, I guess I might have some descendants, we are going to be a blessing. Okay, and those that bless you, they'll be blessed. We're going to see real shortly the folks that bless Abraham are going to be blessed, and those that curse Abraham are going to be cursed. Mess with me and I'll mess with you. Bless me and I'll bless you. Kiss me and I'll kiss you back. Slap me and I'll slap you back. Some of y'all don't, that was good music right there, though. Yeah, some of y'all don't know that. Anyway, and this part right here, and this part right, this is an awesome part right here, guys. And in you, this is in you, with you, this also can be taken through you, in you, in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. This word right here is kol mishpachah, or in this case, kol mishpachoth, which is all of the generation, all of the families, all the genealogies, all of these people, all the families shall be blessed. So who shall be blessed because of this covenant that God is getting ready to establish with Abram? Who gets blessed? Who benefits from this? Vitally important. Everybody. Everybody. Ben says, what's the Hebrew word for Abram? The Hebrew word for Abram is Abram. The Hebrew word for Abram is Abram. Okay? Now, Abraham, when he changes his name, it's a different meaning. Big difference on the meaning. Going back to verse 4, he says, so Abram went forth as, I'm sorry, before I go there, I want to deal with the elements of this covenant. The elements, there's a people element, there's a land element, and there's a kingdom element. Now, we haven't gotten to these passages yet, but we're going to look at these in just a second. We're going to look at these elements, two of them specifically, in just a second. Because it makes sense. If I'm going to be a nation, what do I need? What does a nation need? A nation needs people. Yeah. Needs people. Needs land. Got to have, listen, we can't be a nation unless we got land. It's not, guys, it's not like Parliament and Funk. Listen, it's not one nation under a groove. It's one nation under God in a land. which also means there must be some sort of leadership, some sort of government. We'll get to the king part later because that's not fleshed out either until much later. Because they won't have a king for a while. Okay, and I haven't earned that part just yet. But what we will be able to earn, just by implicit in him being a great nation, means there must be people in a land. That's Sister Becky. You didn't hear what I said. I didn't say that Abraham's faith had nothing to do with his blessing. No, that's not what I said. I said that his faith wasn't him leaving the land. No, that him leaving the land, that was not accredited to him as faith. He was already leaving. He was following Terah. Terah said, "Let's go. Come on, pack up your bags. Let's go." The faith part comes in just a little bit, in heeding and believing what God said, not the part about leaving the land. Remember, God wasn't the one that told him to leave the land. God just says, "Okay, since you're leaving, now come on, I got a place for you to go." Are you with me? Good question though. Sheila said, "I like that song." Amen. I feel like, you know what, I might go ahead and listen to that song. That's when music was good. Anyway, I will, Ben, in just a second. I will. So, verse 4. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken him to, and Lot went with him. So now he's following. Okay, fine. Where am I going now? Terah took me out of the land. Now I'm following you. Where are we going? Oh, I'm taking Lot with me. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his nephew, and all their possessions, which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Now we're going to a place where we ain't really cool with these people. They're our descendants. But what was the pronouncement? Remember this curse that Noah has on Ham, or on Canaan. Okay? So they set forth to this land of the Canaan. Abram pressed through the land as far as the site of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh, or Moreh. Now the Canaanite was in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Wait a minute, the Lord shows up to Abram? Interesting. The Lord shows up to Abram. Now, I just want you to highlight this just for the time being, guys. Just for the time being. The Lord, this very same person, where we have this tetragrammaton, the Yad He Wah He, you may have Yahweh or Yehovah or Yahweh, however you want to pronounce it. That person that we saw in Genesis, the Lord, is now there. He appears to Moses. Okay? This word here for the word, for is Moses can see him. I keep saying Moses to Abram. Abram to Abram. Abram sees him, which is the Hebrew word not Ra'ah, which is that he sees him. So he appears, or he's able to be seen by Abram. Then he proceeds from there to the mountain on the east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. Abram journeyed on, continuing toward Negev. And the word Negev just means to the south. So Abram's going to the south side. That's the word Negev. Now, there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there. Why are you going to Egypt? Here it is. For the famine was severe in the land. A good writer would just say, you know what? A famine in the land drives you to Egypt. A famine in the land drives you to Egypt. I'm not saying anything right now, but obviously you all know the story. We're going to see this famine in the land driving someone to Egypt. That's going to be the case again. Yeah, Layla. So Abram saw God. That's literally what that means. The word Ra'ah means to see, and he saw God. There was a severe famine in the land, verse 11. It came about when he came near to Egypt that he said to Sarai, his wife, See now, I know that you are a beautiful woman. How beautiful is this old lady that, man, you look too good. Somebody's going to do something. Look what he says. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me. Abram is such a family protector. He's going to protect his wife. Abram says, when they see you, I'm going to kill them. Don't worry about it, honey. I got this. No, that's not what he says. This is his wife. They will kill you, but they will let you live. Please say that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may live on account of you. Tough guy, Abram. It came about when Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Pharaoh's she was so pretty. We got to tell Pharaoh. When you get to heaven, yeah, you want to see some people, but how pretty was she? That at an old age, guys were just killing themselves over her. Anyway, Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. Therefore, he treated Abram well for her sake and gave him sheep and oxen and donkeys and male and female and servants and female donkeys and camels. But you don't mess with God's plan. You do not mess with God's plan. Look what he says. Hold on, wait a second. Let's fix this. It says, no offense, but I think that you are reaching about Abram calling to leave by God, and that he already was on his way to say that. Okay, listen, that's fine. Let's go back to, we are in verse 17. Let's put that over here, which I should have been over here in the first place. Let's go to verse 31 and let's see. There's no problem. I don't have a problem if you think if it's a stretch. Let's look at verse 31 and see what you read it for us. You read it. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son, Abram's wife, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan. So, my friend, who is taking him out? I understand you go to chapter 12, verse 4. So what do? We get to chapter 12, verse 4 and negate what we just read. How can the two be true? So if we drop down to verse 4, how can the two be? So Abram set forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. How could verse 4 of chapter 12 be true along with chapter 11, verse 31 be true as well? They both have to be true unless you mean tell me we got a contradiction this early in the Bible? If we have a contradiction this early in the Bible, we can throw it away. The only way for them to be true is because, like it said in verse 31, Terah takes him and we're leaving. And so here God steps in and says, as the Lord has spoken to him, and Lot went forth. Now, So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him. Spoken to him what? And Lot went out. Now, so he tells him, after this, I will make you a great nation. Verse 1 is probably a better one to look at. Now, the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country. Well, he's already doing so. So now we're seeing him as, this is just, the only way it can be taken is that as you are going. That's the only way it can be taken unless you say that we have a contradiction. He was leaving already. And remember, we're going to see where the Bible literally says it's accounting him faith at this point, but not here. Okay, let's go back to it. Verse 17 in chapter 12. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Then Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. So nothing happened. Nothing happened that night. Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away with his wife and all that belonged to him. Now, notice what happened. He shows up. Why is he in Egypt in the first place? Why is he in Egypt in the first place? Because of a famine. How is he leaving Egypt? Don't miss this. How is he leaving Egypt? With more stuff. With his wife intact and more stuff. Chapter 13, verse 1. Now Abram went up from Egypt to the south, or to Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. the stuff that he also got from Egypt. Now, Abram was very rich in livestock and in silver and in gold. He went on his journeys from the Negev, or from the south, as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. So he goes back to home base, basically, to the place of the altar which he had made there formerly, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now, Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, and the land could not sustain them, while dwelling there, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to remain together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. Now the Canaanite and the Perizzites were dwelling then in the land. So they're in a place where the Canaanites and the Perizzites were. Verse 8. So Abram said to Lot, please, let there be no strife between me and you, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen. Verse 9. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If to the left, then I will go to the right, or the opposite direction. Verse 10. So Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord. So you know what? He looked up, saw that's the better land to go. I'm going that way. Okay, fine. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So where is he going? Let's stop for a second. Where is Lot going? He's going to Sodom and Gomorrah. Whose descendants are Sodom and Gomorrah? We read that. Remember, the descendants of Sodom and Gomorrah are from the descendants of Ham, from Canaan. Call on the name of the Lord. What does that mean? It does not mean to call upon his actual name, the nomenclature, because we don't know what it is. Okay? We don't know what that is. We haven't been told that. Okay? But it's just calling upon him, reaching out to him. That's all it means. That's all it means. That's a good question. That's all it means, though. Nothing fancy, nothing. Just call upon the name of the Lord. Call upon him. And we're being specific about what Lord. Okay, let's go back to it. Like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you go to Zoar, so Lot chose for himself all the valley of Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord. Really? They're descendants of Ham, their great-great-grandpappy. This is why he cursed them, because he knew what your people were going to be. He knew. And so these cursed people, now he runs right into them, and he's got to deal with them. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, now lift up your eyes. Here comes one particular element of the covenant that he's going to. Now guess what? He hasn't established this covenant just yet. He tells him to look up, lift up your eyes, and see this. From the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward, for all the land which you see, I will give it to you and your descendants forever. Look what he says. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also can be numbered. Arise, walk about through the land, its length and breadth, for I will give it to you. Then Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. And we're going to see the oaks of Mamre later on. Does that verse show that even if you didn't know that you sin, that sin still applies and its consequences as well? Oh, you mean as far as the Canaanites? Well, remember, we're in a dispensation where the sins of the father will be upon the sins of the children, will be upon the children. Okay, so that's going to change later, but it hadn't happened yet. Now, I won't go into all of this. There's this war with these kings. Okay, and there are 4 kings, and they're asking these folks to pay tribute and so forth. In this war, though, They also come to Sodom and take possession and take people. They end up taking somebody special to Noah. I mean, to Noah. Now I got Noah in my brain. They end up taking someone special to Abraham or Abram. That is Lot. Verse 12. They also took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions and departed, for he was living in Sodom. Now we got a problem. Because now you're messing with my people. If you'd just left me and mine alone, but now Abram is upset. But I want y'all to see something. This is important also. 14:13. Then a fugitive came and told Abram the Hebrew, now he was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol, the brother of Aner, and these were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he led out his trained men born in his house, 318, and they were in pursuit as far as Dan. Now, they end up catching up and getting his nephew back. But I said something. I don't know if you all caught this. I'm pretty sure somebody caught this. You know why I'm pretty sure some of you all caught this? Because, again, world's greatest YouTube family. You guys are super smart, super intelligent. But I wonder if you caught something that was said. We get something that was said that was never said before. We get something, doggone it, gosh dog it. I told you, folks are smart. A Hebrew. Wait a second. I thought Abram was not Jewish. I thought he wasn't a Hebrew. Now, is there a difference? Let me just say this. Is there a difference between being Hebrew and being Jew? No, there's not. No, the words end up becoming synonymous. But Hebrew, how is Abram a Hebrew? Well, in order to figure this out, we've got to go back and see where that name comes from. We got to go back and see where that name's coming from. Where am I at? Let me see. Which go to. I thought I had it set up. Where's 11? Where is 11? Okay, let's put it on the screen. Remember when I said all those names that we're going over, they matter. Genesis 11:14. Shall I live? This is one of Abram's descendants. Shall I live 30 years and became the father of Aber? And shall I live for now? This name right here, Aber, is what it is. That's where the name comes from. Hebrew means Ibri, which is from Aber. And just like all that, I knew you knew that. Craig OG says Aber. That's where it comes from. So he's called an Aber or Abru, or from someone of descendant of Aber. That's where the term Hebrew comes from. Okay? That's where the term comes from. And so, yes, he was a Hebrew descendant of Aber, which is Ibri, or if you use the more modern way of saying the bay sound, which is a smooth V, Ibri. So that's where that comes from. I wanted you guys to see that. I didn't want you guys to gloss over that. But remember I said that these elements or these promises to Abram, I'm sorry, wrong one. We see already there's people and there's land being spoken of here in Genesis 13, 14, and 15, and Genesis 13 and 16. So I wanted to make mention, I highlighted that earlier. I wanted to come back and make sure that we saw that again. So now, after this though, chapter 14, after this defeat, I don't know if I want to go into this. Yeah, I do. Genesis 14, 17. Then after his return from the defeat of the Kedar Amor, I do not like saying that long name. Kedar Amor and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom, went out to meet him in the valley of Sheva, that is the king's valley. All right. Let me check something out real quick. Make sure that this is working. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, cool. I just want to check something out and make sure. All right. So, I'm sorry, verse 18. Here's an interesting part. We've covered this before, though. Verse 18, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was a priest of God Most High. He blessed him, and he said, blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And God blessed, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. and he gave him a tenth of all. Now, the questions are going to be, some folks are going to say, who is this? I did a video. I won't go too far in depth with this, but is this an actual man who is the king of Salem? Could be. Could be. Is this a pre-incarnate Christ? Even though we hadn't gotten there. And I'm time out, we haven't earned any of these things just yet. We hadn't earned any of this, but someone is going to ask because it gets brought up about Melchizedek. I did a video covering that, so if you guys want to go back and check that video out, and even in the video, I don't make a definitive statement. I say where I lean, but it can be either or. There's only really two options. There's three brought up, but there's two that could possibly be. It could be an angel. Doubt it, though, because now you're giving tribute, you're giving a tithe to an angel. That never happens. Could it be the Lord, pre-incarnate Christ? It could be. Again, we don't even know who Christ is yet, but just we're out of time. I mean, we're in timeout right now. Could be him because we've already seen him see God earlier. Or could it just be an actual man? Well, all we know thus far, and so this is what we'll leave it at, it is a man as far as we know. Now, what kind of a man, we don't know just yet. Okay? Verse 21, the king of Sodom said to Abram, give the people to me and take the goods for yourself. Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have sworn to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours. For fear you would say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing except what the young men have eaten and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, and let them take their share. In other words, I'm not going to be beholden to you. I am only beholden to God. Okay. All right, cool. I'm sorry, I'm just checking two things out at one time. Chapter 15. This is where I think it's been good, but I think it's about to get really, really, really gooder-ist. It's going to be really, really gooder, and it's going to become, this is going to be the most gooderest part of the session. It's not a word, but you get my drift. Chapter 15, verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, do not fear, Abram. I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be great. Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me? Abram is always focused on Abram. No, I guess it's no problem. What will you give me, since I am childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus? Which is a good question, since the fact you said that I'm going to be a great nation. How? It's just me and my wife. And oh, by the way, God, both of our clocks are ticking. All I've got is Eleazar of Damascus. He's my right-hand man. Abram said, since you've given no offspring to me, no one born in my house is my heir. Then, behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, this man will not be your heir, but one who you will come from your own body. He shall be your heir. And he took him outside. Now look toward the heaven, count the stars, if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. Wait a minute. So someone said about this whole issue of God, of Abraham believing God and it become righteousness to him, or being in right standard. This is the first time that statement is made about Abram. Look what he says. Then verse 6, he believed the Lord. Then he believed the Lord, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. So that's the verse that it becomes reckoned to Abraham righteous. What's going to happen? God says this is going to happen. You're going to have a son out of your own body. And look at this land that I promised you. It's going to be yours with your son and your sons after that as your descendants. And so what happened? Abram believed him. At that moment, then God reckons it to him as righteousness. Not leaving the land. Again, he was already leaving the land. But where am I going? To the place I'm going to show you. I'm showing it to you now, and you're going to have your descendants. Verse 7. He says, to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess it. He said, O Lord God, how may I know that I will possess it? So he said to him, here it is. Here it is. Bring to me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Then he brought all these to him, and he cut them in two. Now, one of the things is that when you make a covenant, one of the traditions is when we make a covenant to cut, because the word covenant means is a Hebrew word for berith, which is a cutting, a shedding of blood, and a passing through. Those are the things that are part of a covenant. Well, I told you the one covenant that we see most preeminent is a marriage covenant. The way God intended to be, there should be a cutting of flesh, a shedding of blood, a passing through and a shedding of blood. Not to be too graphic, but on the wedding bed on the night of marriage, you've got two virgins, and that's what happens. But then also, if we're using animals, there's a cutting of flesh, a shedding of blood, and a passing through. Okay? A cutting of blood, a passing of flesh, a passing of shedding of blood and passing through. Would you say? So saying from your own body is God specifically speaking about Sarai. Well, he must be because there's only one wife. The problem is, though, Abram wants to do some thinking. Sarai wants to do some thinking too. And her thinking, Abram's like, I can get with that. We'll see in a second, though. So, look what he says. He brought all these to him, and he cut them into and laid each half opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds. Then the birds of prey came down upon the carcass, and Abram drove them away. Here it is, verse 12. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, terror and great darkness fell upon him. God said to Abram, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, where they will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. Thank you, Abram, or at least the Jews should say. Abram wanted a sign. I'll give you a sign. You won't see it, though, but the sign will be that your descendants will be enslaved for 400 years in Egypt. Thank you, Abram. Since you want a sign, I'll give you a sign. But I also, verse 14, will judge the nation whom they will serve, and afterwards they will come out with many possessions. This nation we know is going to be Egypt. Well, where did he just come from? Egypt. How did Abram come back from Egypt? With great possession. What took Abram to Egypt in the first place? A famine. What's going to take these people to Egypt? A famine also. Even though we hadn't gotten there yet, we already know the story. But verse 14, I'm sorry, I haven't earned that yet, but I just want you all to see this as we get there. Verse 14, but I will judge the nation whom they will serve, and afterward they will come out with many possessions. Verse 15, as for you, look what he says, you shall go down to your fathers in peace. You will be buried at a good old age. Then in the fourth generation, they will return here, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete. Okay. There's a lot that could be said about this iniquity of the Amorites that's not yet complete. Well, the Amorites, where are they at in this land? These are enemies of Abram. And so there's all this sin that's going on in their land, and they're still running amok, so to speak. Okay? Here it is, though. Verse 17. It came about when the sun had set that it was very dark, and behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a flaming torch which passed between the pieces. On that day, here we have the Abrahamic covenant being instituted. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. Now, we go and look at all of these names here. I want you to understand something. Israel, his descendants, have never occupied all of that God has given them. We'll find out why, but that's a lot of land. But notice, Abram's asleep. So who goes between the flesh? God does, not Abram. Meaning this is not a bilateral covenant. This is not a conditional covenant. This is the only person who has the right and the responsibility to keep the terms of this covenant is who? Not Abram, not his descendants, not any of us, not those who are going to benefit from this covenant. God. We see here a unilateral, unconditional covenant. Very important. God is the one that's responsible for keeping this covenant. God says, I'm going to do this. Remember the terms of the covenant, guys. Remember the conditions, what he said is going to be a part of this covenant. Let's go back to it, chapter 12, verse 2. He says, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you, I will curse. And this is the part that's more significant for us if we're not Jewish. And in you, that is through Abraham, or Abram, all the families of the earth will be blessed. All the families of the earth will be blessed. So that is extremely important. So who is going to make sure that this is going to happen? God is. The onus is not on you. God is not depending. You know why God is not depending upon us or you or anyone else? Because in man's best state, the best condition that he could ever be in the garden, you blew it. So we're not dependable. We're not faithful. That part I don't know, Jeff. I don't know. I don't know why he hadn't cut the birds in half. I don't know. Now maybe he does later. I just don't know. So that's why I have to leave that there. Make your name great. Is that why we say God of Abraham? Well, could be, but when we say make your name great or make you a great nation, later on we're going to see Hagar, who is thoroughly involved in this. I shouldn't say that because we hadn't earned that yet, but he's going to say the same thing about her descendants. So it just means in terms of size as well as fame as well. So no, is God making covenant with Abram in the spiritual realm because he's asleep? No. He's making a real covenant. He's making this. Listen, this covenant is not just implemented and will affect the spiritual. It affects the physical. Now it does obviously affects the spiritual, but it affects the physical. Mess with Israel, I'll mess with you. That kind of been kind of the case. And then we see physically, if you do anything to Abram and his people, God will step in. Even if God is in the midst of spanking his descendants, he's still going to step in and deal with those people. Because what does he just tell Abram? The nation that does this, that enslaves you, I will deal with them and cause you to come out of there with great wealth. So it's both physical and spiritual. Okay. Now, I want to go a little further and introduce something else. And this is where we're going to stop. Chapter 16, verse 1. Now, Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. Now, the Bible doesn't say. The Bible does not say, but where is it possible? I don't know. It's just speculation on my part. Is it possible that this maid may have come from him when he was in Egypt? Is that possible? Don't know, but it makes me wonder, is that possible? And so it says, and she had borne him no children, and he had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, now behold, the Lord hath prevented me from bearing children. Please go into my maid, perhaps I will obtain children through her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. Abram didn't fight that one, did he? After Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Abram's wife Sarai took Hagar, the Egyptian maid, her maid, and gave her to her husband and Abram as his wife. Now remember, we're told that the two should become one. Not the three of us should be one or the five of us, no. Because who started doing that? Cain was the guy that started going in a different direction. More than one wife. So now here comes Sarai. All right. And where does Sarai get this wife from? From Canaan. From Egypt. He went into Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she conceived, her mistress was despised. So now you come up with this plot, Sarai, and it works, and now you're upset. All right, cool. Not cool, though, by the way. And Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be upon you. I know. Wait a second, Sarai. Hold on. So now Abram's at fault. He did what you said, and now he's at fault. No, okay. But then again, that's what we do. We blame somebody else. And Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be upon you. I gave my maid into your arms, But when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her sight. Well, you despise her too. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight. So Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. So Hagar flees from her presence. Now, look at this part. Now we got somebody interesting showing up. Guys, as they say, it just got real, or it's about to just get real. Now the angel of the Lord, Malach Yahweh, or Yahweh, however you want to say it, the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way of Shur. Who is the angel of the Lord? We're going to find out who the angel of the Lord is. By the spring on the way to Shur, he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself to her authority. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, here it is. Here it is. I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. Pretty interesting for an angel to say so. An angel says so. An angel. Now, it's got the angel of the Lord. It's the definite angel. The definite article is there under the Ma. The angel of the Lord says, I will multiply your descendants. So this is some regular old angel. Clearly not some regular old angel. The angel of the Lord, verse 11 says to her, behold, you are with child, and you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. The Lord is doing so, okay. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone will be against him, which is kind of how we see that now when we realize who his descendants are. And he will live to the east of all his brothers. Then, look what she says. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are a God who sees. For she said, have I even remained alive here after seeing him? Therefore, the well was called Beer Laharoi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. Now, here's the question. Here is the question. Who is the angel of the Lord? Can you go over the Hebrew word they are using for angel in this context? The word that's used in this context is, where's it at? Here it is, guys. Amalek, Malek, Yahweh, or Yahweh, however you want to pronounce it. We don't know the proper pronouncement. Now, when we say the angel, in our mind, the first thing that pops up is what we think an angel is. Somebody with wings, right? No, it's not always an angel. It's just simply a messenger. Okay, this word right here for angel, malak, the word means a lot of different things. This word, the root of this word has been used for a ruler, a king, an angel, or a messenger. Okay, this particular messenger has a definiteness to it, a definite article attached to it. So it is the angel of the Lord. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything until we see what the angel of the Lord, the characteristics or the traits that are ascribed to him. Because he says, I will multiply him and give him a great name. Then look what it said. Look at verse 13. And this right here, guys, is extremely important. But yeah, Sister Becky, the Bible says an angel, and I believe it was an angel, God's messenger. Okay. Problem is there's something else that's added to this. Verse 13. Then that's Hagar, she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. Now, so I want you all to look at this. I'm not making anything up. I'm putting this on the screen for you to see. Then she called the name Shem, and then look at this word for Lord. She called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. Well, who said it's the Lord? First of all, who's telling this story? Let me come full camera. Who is telling this story to us, guys? Why is this up here like that? That makes no sense. Okay, I just messed up. Doggone it. My little placeholder is gone. Okay, so I'll fix that. No problem. Who is telling the story? Matter of fact, let's put it back on the screen. I got to. Let me move this over, make this better. I done got my thing all off. Wait a minute. Let me fix this. Doggone it, Corey. Let me fix this. Some kind of way I done messed up my whole screen. Let me fix this really brief. It won't take very long. Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. Let's see if I can fix this better over here. I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix this up right. Okie dokie. I don't know how I did that. Okay. Move that up. Move that up. Move this down. All right, cool. Bam. Now, who just told us? Who calls this? Who says this is the Lord? Doggone it, Corey. I got to put a placeholder there. Let's go to NLT. Let's put that right there. Slide that over there. There we go. Now, there we go. Now, who calls this? Who says this was the Lord? She says, then she called the name of the Lord. Who's telling us the story again, guys? Moses. As Jones said, Moses as told by God. So God is recounting the story to Moses. So who calls this the Lord? I don't necessarily know that it was her that said that this is the Lord. This is Moses calling it the Lord. Moses says that she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. And the word for the Lord is what? Yahweh. So yeah, you can say this is a messenger, but this messenger has a name. There's the issue, Sister Becky. The messenger literally has a name. The messenger has a name, and it is the name Shem, which is the name Yahweh, or Yahweh, or Yahweh, or Yahweh, however you want to pronounce it. The messenger has a name. That's this word here, Shem, which is name, and it's Yahweh. Now, she didn't say the name of the Lord. Moses is saying that's what she called. Guess what, guys? She called the name of the Lord. Then she tells us what she calls the name of the Lord. What does she call him? She says that you are a God who sees. You are the God that sees. Now, if Becky, I think you're confused if you're saying that Hagar is the one that's calling him Yahweh. Because Moses, if she's correct, first of all, one, two things. Even if it were Hagar who said so, Moses is telling the story and God is telling him, so no one corrects her. And look what she says. You are God who sees. Well, that's not a regular old angel, is it? That's not a regular old angel. A God who sees, for he says, I have even seen him and remain. Seen who? Seen who? God. Therefore, the place shall be called Ber Lahai Roy. Between it is Kadesh and Beret. So here we've got an instance of someone showing up on the scene, and this person calling the one that's showing up on the scene who's acting like God, because only God is the one that blesses and multiplies people. So we got an angel, a messenger showing up on the scene, acting like God, saying that he's going to do things that only God can do. And he's called God. And fine, Sister Becky, if you want to say that she called him the name of the Lord, was she correct? So, Sister Becky, because I know here's what's happening. Your intentions are to eisegete the text. Your intention seems to me, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be that in your mind, you know where this leads to. This might lead to, let's take a time out, guys, and this is why we have to study the way it is. Because what you cannot do, according to this study, is take what you think you might know later in the future and ring it in here. So here's my question to Becky and anyone else. Who's speaking to her? What's the Hebrew name of the person that's speaking to her? We have the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh. God is speaking to her. Does anyone disagree that is not Yahweh? Does anyone think that is not Yahweh speaking to her? Who is speaking to her? That's the question. Who is speaking to her? Now, this is where I want you guys to answer this question. Who is speaking to her? Matter of fact, let me take this here for one brief second. Okay. And I'm letting this propagate. I want to see what you guys are saying. Who does she say is speaking? Now, by the way, when we go back to it, let me put it back on the screen. In 16, is it 16? In 16:9, it says 16:7, it says the angel of the Lord found her. Who told us this was the angel of the Lord? Well, that's Moses saying it's the angel of the Lord. Then the angel of the Lord, again, verse 9. But if we drop down here, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. So the Lord, now here's it. Look at the word that's used for Lord here, though. Yahweh is the word that's used for Lord here. And then we drop down. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. So who spoke to her? The Lord. Who's speaking to her? The Lord. Now, lest we be confused and think that this is some other, the Lord. Okay, see, now what you want to do is, because this is why I want us to have the Bible study this way, because you're going to have to fight those urges to bring what you think you know and to fit in here. That's going to be the issue, guys. So if a person, take a time out and let's just be serious about this. There are folks who do not believe in this term, the Trinity. Now, we're not talking about the Trinity. We're just talking about God right here. And they want to fight that. All I ask is one question. Who's speaking to her, Becky, and anyone else? Who is speaking to her? According to the passage, let's put it back on the screen. According to this passage, Becky, when I asked who's speaking to her, you said it didn't say that, Corey, but the Bible says it, right? The Bible says it was the angel of the Lord. Okay, fine. It was the angel of the Lord. Who else does it say? Who else does it say? Verse 13. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. My question is, who spoke to her? Becky, who spoke to her? Everyone else. The Lord who spoke to her. Who spoke to her? Everyone else should be able to get this. The Lord. Now, this word Yahweh, where do we see this word Yahweh? The very first time that we see this Yahweh, the one that's the name of the Lord, the one who spoke to her, is over here in Genesis 2:4. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created. In the day that, the Lord, that same Yahweh, made the heavens. Yahweh, God, made the heavens and the earth. So it's the same name that shows up. You say God spoke to her through an angel, but now you're adding to the text. Now you're making this okay. So let's go back to the passage. This is why we do bad with our studies. This is why you just said, sweetheart, and I want you to see what you just said. You said God spoke to her through the angel. Is that what the text say? All we're going off is what the text says. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. Does it say the name of the Lord who spoke to her through an angel? No. Now you're adding to the text. This is the problem that we have with not all of our churches, but with many of our churches. We want to take what we think. Does it say God spoke to her through an angel? No. This angel of the Lord spoke to her, and she calls the name of the Lord who spoke to her. The Lord, Yahweh. And she says, you are a God who sees. So even what does she call him? God. She calls this messenger of the Lord, this angel of the Lord, this Yahweh, she also calls him God. You see me. He calls him God. Are you with me? The problem is, guys, and this is why, and we're gonna stick to these standards of this study to take only what it says. We haven't gone any further. We haven't gone any further in Genesis. We hadn't gotten to Exodus, Leviticus. So we don't even have to talk about the Trinity. All we know is that the person that is speaking to her is who? The Lord. Now, earlier we asked another question. Who spoke to Abram? Who appeared before Abram? The Lord. That's my question. Who appeared before Abram? Matter of fact, let's go back to that passage. Let's go to Genesis 12. Let me put it back on the screen. Copy. You can fight me, or you can fight the text. Becky and everyone else. Genesis 12. Then the Lord appeared to Abram. So the question, who appeared to Abram? Look at that word again. Yahweh appeared to Abram. Now, are we going to fight the text because of our fear of what we're going to have to submit to later? Are we going to fight the text for this reason? Was it an angel that appeared to Abram? Or was it the Lord? He sees it. He literally sees him. So it's not impossible that the Lord will show up and appear to someone. He just did it there. And he also did it again in Genesis 13. The Lord. You would literally have to be part of some group that doesn't want to hear the truth to say that that's not what it is. That's literally what it says. Now, yeah, the Lord does speak through people. But would you ever call, if I'm reading the Bible, or if you ever think that the Lord is speaking through me, would you ever call me God who sees? Would you ever call me God? Would you ever call me Yahweh? Would you ever call me Lord? You would never do that. We don't have an instance of that ever happening. Never, ever, not once. And so it hadn't happened yet. It won't happen as we read further. And so she calls him God. Moses and who's being told this by God, they don't disagree. They don't correct her. And that's the point. So, chapter 16, verse 15. Let's go back to it. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. By the way, in the title is is Ishmael. The Lord, what did she say his name's going to be? A God who's, I'm sorry. Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to you. So implicit in that is that it is. Okay. Long as you got, I'm reading someone's comments. Long as you got that point right. So let's go back to it. So in verse 15, so Hagar bore Abram a son and called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. By the way, the name God is also in this title. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Now, we'll stop there at 17. We'll come back at chapter 17, verse 1. But I want to make this plea to you guys. And by the way, guys, what just happened? This happens every time we do this class. Every time we do this class. Here, online, or when I've got an actual class of people in front of me, every time. So what I'll say is this. Go back and just deal with the text. We're only in 16 chapters. So go back and read the instances of when we see God, when we see the Lord, when we see the Lord God. Go back and see. I don't care about there being a Trinity. I don't care about there not being a Trinity. I don't care about once saved, always saved, or lost salvation. I don't care about tongues or no tongues. I care about what the text says, and whatever it says is what we'll say. That's what I care about. The problem is we end up doing these things where I think it means this. Based on what? Based on what? First of all, what is an angel? Let me type something in real briefly. Let me just see something. I want to ask you a question, guys. If we go back to this passage in Genesis 16, because what you just did also violated everything else that we covered, and I think that you probably would have agreed to cover it or to proceed this way. Do we know what an angel is, guys? So far in the text, do we know from Genesis 1 to Genesis 16 or 17, do we know what an angel is? Have we ever even seen or heard of an angel in the first 16 chapters? I want you to think about this for a second. Just, my wheels are turning. The answer is going to be no. The very first time that word even shows up, the very first time that word shows up is with this person, the angel of the Lord. We haven't heard about a regular angel. We haven't even heard about a regular angel who you might be thinking of. All we know is the angel of the Lord, the messenger of the Lord. So what we cannot do now is say what the messenger has to be, who he has to be, what he has to be. All we know is the very first messenger of God that we see is this one. And this very first messenger of God is called God. There we go. Now, are there different messengers? Maybe. Don't know yet. Hadn't gotten farther. Hadn't gotten past verse 6, chapter 17, verse 1 yet. Question. Has God only appeared to Abram and Hagar? No. He appeared to obviously Abram and Hagar. It'd be probably likely, even though the Bible didn't say so, it's probably a good way to say, it's probably a safe bet to say that he also appeared to Enoch. Probably. But we can't make that case, so that's just speculation, but I think it's a good speculation. But then also, Adam and Eve, who they hide from? The Lord. That very same person. So there's 4 people that we know that have seen the Lord. Adam, Eve, specifically spoken of, Abram, and Hagar. How special is Hagar to be one of them? So now, what'd you say? Yeah. And the deal is, Dinah, it's just that it takes a level, that same level of discipline to not want to just trying to jump in and chime in what you think you have to say. Because I can promise you this. The point is going to come where we do more of this and guys are going to want to jump in and ram something in. Like, wait a second. And we'll find that you are clearly off because you wanted to fit what you thought you know, but according to the text, it can't be. And remember, this text that we're at right now can't contradict a later text. I think so too, Ben. I think Noah's implied as well. The problem is, remember, we're only going to say what we earned. We're only going to say what we've earned. And so since we haven't earned those things yet, we can't say it. And it's really not that big a deal if Noah did or did not see him physically, appear to him physically. Same thing with Enoch, although it's kind of hard for him to be taken away and not see him. But I don't know. I'm not God. I don't know how that works. But the point of the matter is, stop trying to fight an argument that you think is coming. Stop trying to build a doctrine or theology. This is the point. That's why I said no Calvinists are allowed, no Provisionists, no Arminians, no Dispensationalists are allowed, no Unitarians, no Trinitarians, no oneness. Nope. You're not allowed. Only someone with an open Bible and open mind. Just look at the text. It's so easy. Listen, this Bible study is so easy, even a prisoner without a GED can get it. And I'm saying that because that's exactly how this was presented to them. And folks on various different levels. And they all end up, when I'm telling you this, guys, they all end up coming together. The only people, and you guys, I want you guys to notice this. I want you guys to notice this as we go forward. The only people that are going to fight are going to be the people that have a theological axe to grind. I want to make my theological point. I want to make my theological point so much so that I can't even discipline myself to wait to make it. I want to make this here because I think I see where you're going, Corey. I'm only reading the scriptures, so you can't see where you think I'm going. I'm only going with the scriptures. I have not introduced not one doctrine yet. I have not introduced one thing. I'm just simply going over the scripture. Okay? So, and I get it. There's passion, there's excitement. Guys, we got all day, all week, all month, all year. We got a long way to go. Okay? Be cool in the chats. Be cool at home. I've seen guys violently turn their pages. Just I'm in such a hurry to disprove or to prove my point, and what ends up happening, we miss the entire point. So far, and let me ask you a question. Let me ask you guys a question. And I want you guys to, even if you're talking with someone in the chats, I want you to do this. I want to ask you guys a question. I want you to ask a question. Answer me this question. You ready? Have I said, and if so, what have I said thus far that is incorrect? Have I said something incorrect? If so, what have I said that I can't ride with you on that, Corey. And this is your chance. This is your opportunity to be honest. And you know what? I disagree with what you said. I've tried to be intentional in not giving an assessment unless when I ask a question and I have to go to a passage. I have to do a timeout and go to a passage. But what have I said that has not been true thus far? That's the point. I want you guys to hear me. Of 920, I'll come back to that. 1689. I'll come back to that. So far, now if I said something that is incorrect, hey Corey, what's Moses? I keep saying Moses. I keep saying Moses. Inadvertently, I need to stop that. Oh, there's no problem, Senior Conrad. Because what's happening is, it was easy to be disciplined on Genesis 1. We're only in Genesis 1. But Genesis 2, now we got more. Genesis 3, Genesis 8, Genesis 11. Do you know what I told you all? Was it last week? Last week, I think it was the week before. We got on Nephilim. This is where now I gotta just kind of just look internally. We got on Nephilim. And people, no, that's not what it means. That can't be what it means. Well, we're only here in Genesis 6 so far. All we can go off of is what we've studied thus far. We cannot go to Genesis 9 yet. We're only in Genesis 6. We can't go to Jeremiah. We can't go to Jude. We can't go anywhere. All we have is this right here. So far, we don't know of Jesus. We know of the Spirit of God. We don't know about the Holy Spirit. We don't know all we know is right now. This is all we know of. This is all we know of. So the issue is going to be, can you stick with this only? And the reason why we spent a little more time in the Nephilim, to make a point. The Nephilim is, and by the way, even in that, we don't even hear the word angel spoken there. Let's deal with what we have so far. This is why, see, we can't keep things in context, because when we get to something that's not as big, the Nephilim, we go out of context and find every other thing to make this. But wait a second, do we have a reason to do so just thus far? We don't. And so if I get aroused and bothered on the Nephilim, I have no hope for anything else, do I? I'm going to want to say everything else. Joan, we don't know. Two reasons why we don't know. One, we don't know who Jesus is. But to answer your question, even once we get all the way to Hebrews, we still don't know who Melchizedek is. Melchizedek is either a man. There's only three things it can be: man, an actual human being, born on earth. It could be Jesus, the pre-incarnate Christ, or it can be an angel. We don't have enough to say one way or the other. So now, point is, guys, let's just stick to the text. We hadn't gone for it. We're in one book. I think someone asked in the second video, the second session, Corey, you're gonna keep reminding? Yeah, I told you guys, go back and watch it. I said I'm gonna have to keep reminding, and when I see it in the chats, I'm gonna have to stop and deal with it because you're not the only one. So I've got to keep going through this. Again, let me go over these one more time. This is so important. This is how you become better at studying the Bible. I'm not telling you what conclusion to come to. We'll let the text do that. But how do you keep from eisegeting the text? How do you keep from reading into the text? Well, one, primary application. Saying what it says and not applying it to everything else. And this part right here. Have we been told that yet? Avoid going to a future text to understand this text if possible. Did you earn that? Can you prove what you say or believe from the text? And we have this word, it's a dirty word, called proof text. You can't go to that one text and use that one text. First of all, there's no such thing as a one text because the writer didn't write an actual verse. But if the text is the truth, it's the truth. We talked about who created what in the beginning. We don't have a lot of text for that. But the definition of a proof text would be us using Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We do see in John 1:1, and we do see some other passages where it talks about it, but it doesn't say just like it says in Genesis 1:1. So therefore, Genesis 1:1 about God creating the heavens and the earth in the beginning is a proof text that we all agree with. It's not a bad word, guys. But what happens is we get to listen to our favorite doctrinal teacher or theologian, and I'm stuck. I like what they said. So what we'll do is we'll just stick with the text. The only way to do so is the best way right now is to take these foundational truths, their truth, and then just apply them as we go forward. Amen? So, yeah, mine is, Chow Yun Cat is a literal grammatical historical hermeneutic. You guys are actually doing the same thing. You guys are actually, you don't even know it. you don't even know it. And everyone that would be in this, that's like, yeah, I like what you're saying. And they may not even hold to or ascribe to my hermeneutic. They're actually using that hermeneutic. Like, but doggone it, Corey, you got me. I didn't get you. Someone else got you. This is not, I didn't invent this. Someone else invented it. So, what'd you say, sir? You said, I just want to enjoy the word. I might have some questions, but I'm already converted. And well, we're not proselytizing anybody. All we're doing is just teaching people or going through how a good way to read the scriptures and understand it. So no, it's not making someone into something that they're not. Okay, now there was a... All right. What was my view on Genesis 9:27? Well, let's go to Genesis 9:27. Let's see. I don't know what I said on Genesis 9:27. Oh, I didn't say much about it. May God enlarge Japheth and let him dwell in the tents of Shem and let Canaan be his servant. Just that God is just after this curse. We know that the descendants of Shem and Japheth, they're together. They go in different, but they're together. It's just the Canaanites and their descendants and their cousins who aren't. And so I think that's really the main point of that. Okay, it was something else. All right, guys. So that being stated, all right. Any other questions about what we've covered? Any other questions about what we've covered? About what we've covered? So it wasn't the messenger of the Lord, as the text says. Okay, let's go back to it. I don't mind. I don't mind covering the point again, Sister Becky. But it says messenger of the Lord. Do you know what messenger of the Lord is? It's going to be the question, because it's the first time that we ever see this term. The first time. Now, I don't want to get too technical. This is part of what's called the Hebrew construct change, when you have something and there's no word for the word of, and so you add of to it. Just like in the Greek, the genitive, there's different nuances for this genitive, this of. The word of can be literally that person. The hand of God is God's hand. Could it be another hand that God just grabs? It could be that. The voice of God, could it be someone else's voice that God is using, or is actually literally his voice? It could be. It can convey something belonging to. It can be something kind of a distant relationship to. Someone that's sent of, like house of cards. Do I mean a house that's made of cards? Do I mean a house that belongs to card, or a house that's built up of cards? The word of can be stretched in different ways. So when we see this word of, which by the way, in the Hebrew, there is no of here. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, in this case, it can be a few things. It can be an angel who has been sent by the Lord. It can be an angel who is the Lord. Those are just the way the word of can be used. Are you with me? An angel that's made up of the Lord. There's just different. Now, I said it in kind of kooky way, but that's just kind of how the word can be stretched. The issue is, how do you take this now? So when you see the angel of the Lord, keeping in mind, we've never seen angel, period. So the only way to take it, at least one way, okay, there's two ways to take it. An angel who was sent by God, who was of the Lord, his angel, belonging to, an angel with the essence of the Lord, or an angel who is the Lord. Well, which one of these three fit with the context? Because the word that's used here is Yahweh. The word that's used here is Yahweh. And what does she call him? She calls him God. You are a God. So it seems to be that the context is not that it is an angel who is owned by the Lord, who belongs to the Lord, but is an angel who is the Lord, because they call him that. They call him the Lord, the very same Lord that created the earth, and then called him God. And oh, by the way, that very same God is telling Moses to tell us his story. So, yeah, and I agree with you, Layla. I think people get hung up on the fact that the word angel was mentioned. But when we go to other passages where the word angel is not mentioned and it's a person there and it's called God, then what do? This is the for the Hebrew Accordance, this is, which one is this? Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, the tagged version. There's also one with the critical apparatus, but that's not the one I'm using. If you guys are, some of you guys are like, what in the world is Jeff talking about? I can't tell you because I don't want to confuse you. If you don't know what he's talking about, then I won't tell you because I don't want you to get confused. That's a good question. We don't know. How does Noah have the ability to curse, seeing that he cursed Ham and his descendants? Don't know, other than maybe the Lord is speaking to him. We don't know. Other than God tells him to, because he wakes up and knows what's happened. We don't know. There's just no way, and so I don't want to give too much license to say, make it up as like, because there's just no, we don't know. There's other people who offer curses. Now, because someone offer curses doesn't mean anything, but again, this is kind of this person's nature. But then we'll see later someone cursing, not even really cursing, but just not blessing his children, of his 12 children, the right way. And how can that be? He's not God. Well, because one, it's part of a prophecy that God has spoken to him and his wife, and so we don't know. We don't know. Good question. Good question. One of two answers. There's one of two answers. God told Noah to get the animals on the ark. Were there dinosaurs? There's only two answers: yes or no. If there were dinosaurs there, then he brought them off. If there weren't dinosaurs, then they died in the flood. Were there dinosaurs? Yes, there were, because in about a week or so, we're going to go to Job, and we're going to see Job talking about these dinosaurs, these big animals in the sea and on land. So one of two things: either they died, they perished in the flood. Because remember, when he gets out, he says that these animals are going to be afraid of you. The fear of man are going to be on these animals. But in Job, it doesn't seem like, and I'm about to create a dilemma for you also, guys. I'm getting ready to create a real big dilemma. How many of you all believe that there were dinosaurs and they were destroyed in the flood, before the flood? It's going to be a big question. A lot of folks believe, yeah, that they were destroyed prior to the flood, before the flood. Well, I just realized this thing is way behind over here. The screen I'm watching is so far behind. Okay, I got it fixed. But okay, now, here is the problem that's created. Y'all ready for this big problem? If dinosaurs were around prior to the flood, the problem is, isn't Job righteous also? Now, God says that only Noah is righteous, but so too is Job. So what happened to Job and his descendants? Were they already dead at this time? We just don't know. We just don't know. There's no way to really figure this out, because it's possible that God could have took the dinosaurs off the ark afterwards and then killed them later. We just don't know. We have no idea. No idea. And so be careful making a guess, an assessment, without any real strong backing. So now, it could be that Job died a long time before, because see, we don't know when the book of Job was written. Was it written at the same time of Genesis, before Genesis, or after Genesis? We just don't know. We have no idea. We can guess, but your guess are going to still be inconclusive to some degree. So anyway, all right, guys, I want to thank you. Was Job around after the flood? We don't know, Craig OG. We don't know. Yeah, you could. Some say he was before the flood. Some say after. Just don't know. And you're right, Chow. Job is going to be a hoot. Am I saying the ever so real T-Rex isn't real? I don't know. You know what? I can promise you this though. If there were a T-Rex, I could promise you that these boys down here in Texas and Alabama and Mississippi that love to barbecue, we'd be eating brontosaurus burgers and barbecue all the time. There's somebody down here with some firearms that would make sure we would be eating good. There'd be no starving kids in the South. Now, north, you folks, I don't know what y'all do, but down in the South, yeah, there'd be barbecues all the time. Yeah. You'd have chicken, beef, pork, fish, and sauruses, whatever sauruses, stegosauruses or brontosauruses, whatever. Yeah, that's what would happen down here. That's funny, David. Did Noah have bread in his pocket? I get that. Anyway, all right, guys, I've got to go. Huh? Okay. Anyway, got to go, guys. I got a bunch to do today. As always, I always say that. I always say, yeah, like the Flintstones, Cindy. Put the big old thing on a car and the car flips over. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much, guys. Look for, by the way, have yourself already read up to, hold on, wait a second. I think it's, I want to say before we go, up to Genesis 25. You need to have read up to Genesis 25, possibly further, probably up to Genesis 40. We're going to move a lot next week. We're going to move a whole lot. In 2 weeks, we'll be out of, no, in 3 weeks, we'll be out of the book of Genesis. And when I say out, we are flying. So, did Job meet the Flintstones? Anyway, goodbye, guys. Love you. See you later.